So good to be with you guys. I'm just going to get my notes up. We just want this to be a really informal chat. And we did say, do you guys want to preach? But actually, we feel like as we just follow the Holy Spirit and ask questions, we are excited to see what God just draws out of you. We want to glean from these guys, right? So we are really excited for that. So obviously, some people in here know you really well. Some of us don't. So it'd be great just to hear, a bit about you. That'd be great.
So my name's Lou, if you don't know me. This is Aled, my husband. So we have 3 children. We've got Bethan, the eldest, Maya, middle one, and Caleb, who is 7. And so I moved to Hastings when I was about 19. Aled's sort of born and bred Hastings. And then we got married and we started our family here. But I'd come from my family when I was growing up. We moved to Portugal. We church planted, into Portugal when we were younger. And I think God started the journey there for what we're about to unpack, of just the sense of his heart for his people and what we're doing here on earth, really. So as we grow our family, we've just developed more of a love for Jesus together, haven't we? Yeah.
Yes, as Lou said, I'm born and bred in Hastings. I'm a Hastings boy, so although I still class myself as a Welshman. True Welshman would say that I'm not Welsh because I was born here in Hastings, but I kind of always saw myself as being in Hastings, staying in Hastings. And when me and Lou, we've been married for 18 years now. 18 years, I got that right. We kind of said we see ourselves in Hastings for the next 5-10 years. And we said that every single year until a number of years ago, say that anymore, because it felt like God started to pull our roots up a little bit. So although I initially felt like we were going to be staying in Hastings, there was definitely a journey where God suddenly started to pull our roots up and we felt, okay, maybe Hastings isn't the long-term place for us.
Amazing. So there's loads to unpack. I feel like God's done a lot. And actually, many of us have been part of the journey as well. This is a church thing, which is exciting. Just to help us through, I think you've felt God highlight 4 areas we're just going to work through. Isn't that right? So we're going to just look at faith-filled obedience and what that means. So just to get that going, you say God spoke to you. So yeah, what was that like? How did it start? How did it happen?
So I think it was about 2021, wasn't it? Oh, over COVID, so just before that. As Aled said, I think we sort of had a little plan, an idea of what we thought we wanted to do, and God started to just loosen our roots, I guess you could say. He started to bring prophetic words to us. He started to move mountains in ways that we didn't expect. Through that was a healing. Our kids got healed from many allergies. And then he started to put the nations on our hearts. So that's sort of what was bubbling beneath the surface. And then it's so hard to unpack it all. I don't know if you want to... You're better at explaining the journey. It's been so long.
I think the thing is, God always... If there's barriers in your way when God tells you to do something, he gives you faith to do it. And he overcomes the barriers. So Lou just mentioned about the kids. When we started feeling like, okay, God's calling us to church plant or to go abroad, there was a few big hurdles or barriers in the way that we said, God, I'm not quite sure how we're going to do this. And one of those was the health of the kids. They were under consultants at the hospital. They had specialist diets and things like that. So Lou started to pray and intercede for the kids. And literally overnight, God completely healed all of them. It was miraculous.
Yeah.
And it was like one of those kind of pre-tasters of the faithfulness of God. If God is going to ask you to step out and do something which requires a large amount of faith, often actually they're like smaller hurdles, things that he tests your faith. It's like building muscles. Those muscles, as you stretch them and as you exercise them, they're able to take stronger and stronger loads. Does that make sense? And I think that was the journey for us. I think it was a conversation with eldership. It was a conversation with the apostolic, a sense of, I'm not sure if you can factor us into the next 5-10 year plan of Kings, because we feel like God's starting to kind of loosen up our roots and we think we might be going somewhere else. But we had a whole season, probably for the best part of 2 years, wasn't it? Where we knew God was calling us to go somewhere, but we had no idea when and we had no idea how or where. Yet we had to put certain things, make certain decisions in order to make ourselves available. I think God sometimes, he's not actually looking for those that are qualified or those that are looking like they're the ones. He's looking for people that are available. Yeah. God calls people and he says, come follow me. And they went immediately and they followed Jesus. And sometimes what God is asking us is, will you follow me? Will you be obedient? And I think we went through a season of just trying to make ourselves available to the call, even though we had no real understanding of what that would look like to begin with.
Yeah, I think that was what was unique about our journey, is that we didn't have like a country that we were passionate about. We didn't have something that God had placed on our heart from young. And everyone I'd spoken to about like mission and going overseas seemed to have this, real burning desire for a certain type of people. And it just wasn't the case for us. And so it felt quite new. I was like, well, God, we know somehow that you're going to ask us to go somewhere, but we didn't know where. Genuinely, it was like we started pushing at different doors, talking to people. This was over COVID, so we couldn't actually go anywhere. And we had an army of people just praying with us. And we'd ask people, have you got something from the Lord for us? And the prophetic words started to just flow in piece by piece. And it started to form this beautiful picture of something of God's heart for us. And I think if we'd known, like with most journeys, if you'd known what was ahead, I don't think we still would have necessarily chosen it. But what God's done through us and in us through these last 4 years, I would absolutely do it again, 100%, because it's so much of love conquers all things, doesn't it? And so when you come to what we're doing this for, who am I doing it for? And it kept coming back to, I love Jesus, so am I going to be obedient? Am I going to be obedient? And I think for Alid, I think the sense of going somewhere exciting, once the piece sort of started to float in that it was Philippines, I think you were really excited about the adventure. And I wasn't, to be honest with you. I'm not a person that would just want to travel and go places, do new things. I'm quite a creature of comfort. And I just had to surrender completely and say, Lord, if I'm going to say that I'm going to be obedient and I'm going to trust you, then this is where the rubber hits the road and I have to do it. But with that surrender came such a sense of not only peace, but like equipping. Because God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. And that was something that just rested on our heart, wasn't it? And it was just so powerful. And it just propelled us. It propelled us in every way. It propelled us through having faith for things that, finances for a start. We had nothing before we went out, and God covered all of that, of course. Wow. We felt propelled for strength, for the trials, for visas. I mean, it's a long story, but we couldn't really get out there. We were pushing different avenues, and he managed to get us to the Philippines on the last day of the year. He'd promised that you're going this year, and we landed, didn't we, on the last day of December 2021. So we've got so many stories, and I'd love to unpack that more with you individually over time. But it was just like, God, if you've called us, then you've got this. I haven't got this. And we didn't feel like we got it, but he had it, didn't he?
Yeah. I think if it was our decision to go, it would be broken. If it was our decision to go, then we would carry the responsibility for making it work. If you go and you say, God, this is your calling and your decision for us to go, then every time a hurdle comes your way, you can just say, God, this is your problem, not my problem. So you'll notice this, like, you go through the Old Testament, it's like, God, there's another hurdle here, there's a people group here, there's an army here, and God says, that's fine, it's my issue. He sends his army angels, he deals with the issues. And I think that has been our testimony, not only in getting out there, but actually in our time there, and even coming back more recently, God has just again and again and again been able to overcome the barriers because he's the one who's called us to do it. So that's where that confidence and faith comes from. But yeah.
Yeah, so obviously I remember that December very well. It was sad to say goodbye to you guys, but exciting for the adventure that was ahead of you. In the middle of a pandemic, lots of lockdowns, you flew to the Philippines. And I suppose, could you just unpack for all of us just what that was like for you as a family?
Yeah. So to start with, God set everything up for us to land, which was amazing. We had to quarantine in a hotel, so he, we stayed there for a couple of weeks, and then we had a house to move into. But I think we felt very different things in going, didn't we? I think we definitely both sensed God's peace. It was very much for me, it was such a big thing that I had to continually surrender, like minute by minute. Obviously, I've got my 3 kids with us as well, and you're coming off the back of COVID as well and being isolated. So when we actually landed in the Philippines, COVID was still quite heavy there. Children had been not allowed out the house for up to a year, wasn't it? They couldn't leave their house for up to a year. And their houses are generally quite small and crowded. So the children, I think they had to stay at the house for another 4 months. They couldn't go anywhere. And then it was only to certain places. They weren't allowed in malls. So starting on that felt hard. It felt really hard. Obviously, we'd been cut off from everything. But we landed with such a sense of being welcomed by, which Alid will unpack who this family is, but Davao Live, the church that we went to work alongside, and the family, the Wick family, that we were landing in the middle of all their work that they were doing. Do you want to?
Yeah, so, is this on?
Yeah.
Right. Sorry. I know, I'm singing it. Yeah, so when we arrived, we had really good friends, Howard and Rosie Wick, who some of you would know, and their family. And we've known Howard and Rosie for a long time. We've never worked with them, but they're an amazing couple with an amazing faith, and it was an incredible adventure to be able to journey with these guys and help them in terms of establishing some communities of faith around the city of Davao. And whilst we were, you can just skip through the photos if you want, Dan. The actual the actual community itself. So here's some of the different community and people that we would have had even in our car. I think we had 14 people in our car one stage. You can cram them in. There's not those kind of, they're a bit lax on those kind of laws and things. But we had
a bit lax.
Yeah. But there's basically a wonderful opportunity to be able to serve and to bless the poorer communities there, whether that's with some of the children's with works like Maya Birds, whether that was working into some of the poorer communities with food banks or like food bank equivalents. And this is very much a journey that we did as a family. So God doesn't just call one of you, actually he calls you as a whole unit, he calls you as a family. So here you see even us and all of our kids, they're all in T-shirts, we're going together. This is something we did together. And God actually called us as a family. So that was something that was really important to say. So we work with Howard and Rosie. There's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of things, but actually what we would say is that the people are absolutely wonderful and they're so hungry for the things of the Holy Spirit, they're so hungry for things of God. But it's a very religious context, a very Catholic nation. And so there's a lot of religiosity, there's a lot of actually witch doctors and a lot of things going on in the background, a lot of strongholds there. So it was a really good teaching experiment for us. It was a really good learning opportunity for us to go out there and learn some of those things and experience what it is to be in the forefront in that kind of area of life. It's an Eastern culture, had to relearn the gospel from a Western context to an Eastern context, so it's very much an honour-shame culture. And you do very much have to present the gospel in a very different way. And that is, again, very good for us to be able to pick up and learn those kind of things. So that was kind of in a nutshell, working with a wonderful team, with a wonderful family, so much richness there, and actually trying to contend with differences. Because reality, with the differences of different culture, we had this phrase which was, it's not wrong, it's different. And you'd find this all the time. You'd have to tell yourself, no, it's not that we're in the right here. We're having to assimilate to a different culture and learn different things. So, and we've got lots of different examples and stories.
Yeah, and quite genuinely, I think if you go into a new place that is, an alien world for you, you become the aliens in that place. You're the different ones. If you go into it thinking that you know better, then you will become very frustrated very quickly. As soon as you submit to what goes on and keep having that phrase go around in your head, I think God was able then to really do things in us rather than us coming to do things. God was able to really be like, no, I've got to teach you in this place too, which is what the journey ended up being more about, I think.
And when that happens, you actually you realise in a fresh way what Jesus would go through to go from one context into another. I think when we became a parent, when I became a dad, it helped me understand the gospel in a slightly different way because of my connection with my own kids. Does that make sense? And my own emotions? And suddenly when I was there in that place, I was like, man, God, Jesus, what you did in order to go into a completely different place, to a different culture, and a different context, is so powerful for us. And actually, one of the things that we feel very passionate about now, we'll talk later on, is being back here. We're actually so passionate for the nations and for those minorities because we've been the minorities. We've been the only white faces walking through a mall and having people come and saying, can we take photographs? Saying to our kids, we want your eyes, stroking their hair and doing these things. We've been the anomaly, you know. And so it's been very interesting to be in that context and to learn what it is to actually be a minority and to be in that thing. And it's absolutely wonderful context to be in, but it also had that challenges as well, that sense of difference. So I'll give you one little funny story of when we got there. I'm quite well travelled, I'm privileged in that I've been to lots of different places, but I've never had to buy a washing machine in a different country. I've never had to go and pay a gas bill in a different country. You go in, you spend your time and come back. Well, I went to go and buy a washing machine, and I thought, well, this might take me an hour, maybe two. Anyway, I was there for the day. And the reason was because when I chose, I was very quick. I don't like shopping. I just said, I'll have that one there. And they then proceeded to unpackage it from the box and unpackage it from the cellophane and unpackage it from the foam. And they then started to plug it in and they started to tap it in. And then they said that they were going to put it on a full cycle while I waited, just so they can show that this machine was going to work. And this is a brand new washing machine. And then they put it on a full cycle. And once they drained it, then they packaged it all back up again. Said, sir, it works. And I say, it works. And then I go home. And in my head, I'm thinking, this is so wrong. But then every time when that kind of thing happens, like, okay, it's not right, it's just different. And you've got to say, this is just the way we do it here. Every time you buy an electrical thing, they'll test it out, they'll say, it works, sir. And that's just the way it works. And you say, okay, that's fine, so that's how it works. And you've got to be, so some of those things, they're just crazy things. In our minds here, we wouldn't be doing that. But that's just what they did there, and that's what we did. So.
And the greatest lesson we learnt from those types of things, which happened regularly, was to just slow down. Like, you could genuinely only do one thing a day just because of the culture and the pace of things. So if I went food shopping, I would probably queue for a couple of hours. And so I started to work out why people didn't have frozen things in their trolley, because by the time you got there, it was obviously completely defrosted. But it was just such a time to think, Lord, rather than rushing on to the next thing, how can I use this time for your glory? And I created a new, this is me personally, but a new way of living, of just any moment, rather than complaining about having to wait or, you know, all the other things that we want to complain about. It was like, how can you be glorified? I can spend time praying to this person. I can talk to the person next to me. I can, you know, there's just so many things that you can do when you're made to slow down. And that ended up being quite a gift that we're struggling then to adapt back to. So
you have something called reverse culture shock, which is actually after several years, you start to acclimatise. It's like thinking this becomes mine to this. So when you come back, you're actually starting to think we're trying to catch up with the pace of life. We're trying to catch up with what it's like to try and do 1,000,001 things at 1,000,001 miles an hour. And actually there's certain bits about the culture that we want to try and embrace and actually be able to hold on to. And that's some of that dynamic, that change of actually, it's not that it's wrong, it's different, but actually some of this different is really healthy. And it helps you identify some of the unhealth in your old culture, some of the unhealth within our culture here that actually isn't necessarily healthy. Some of that busyness, some of that drivenness, some of that other stuff, which they don't have the ability to control things or be driven in that way. And that's been quite releasing, so yeah.
It's amazing. So you were there, it's culture shock, taking it all in, smells and difference and wonderful things. Did you have any idea how long you'd be going for? So I know God spoke to you a bit about it, didn't he?
No, I think, well, put it this way. We sold a house. We got another one that we could rent out. But we sold and gave away everything else. So we went very much, okay, we're all in here, we're going. And we thought it could be 2 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years. And so when we would talk to people in the Philippines, how long are you here for? We would just say, as long as God calls us to be here. We had no real clear understanding. There was someone that, outside of this context, who gave a prophetic word saying, I believe that he was actually, it was near Christmas time, and he was looking through, is it Matthew chapter 2, and Joseph has a dream, where he basically gets visited by the angel who says, take your family, go to Egypt and stay there until you're called to come back. And he said, I feel like, he says, I know that you're a Hastings boy, I know you're planning on staying in Hastings, but I think God is calling you to take your family, go to a different nation, and to stay there until God tells you to come back to Hastings. There's something of what God's going to do is a deposit in you somewhere else that's going to be brought back here. So we always knew that this was going to be our home. This has been an us journey, not an us journey. But we always knew that we'd come back. We just didn't know entirely sure when.
And that prophetic word actually became quite a concrete thing to keep standing on, because whenever I wanted, maybe me, but us, thought, can't be here any longer, don't want to be here, this is too hard, looking at flights, things like that, kept saying to Alid, like, okay, has God asked us to go back? No. Then I guess we stay. And so it kept coming back to that question, has he asked us to come back yet? No. Then we stay. And so that was really helpful for me to ground my feelings and just keep surrendering them over to him, to remember he's spoken and he will keep us here for as long as is needed. And that was really ended up being quite a powerful.
I think coming back for me was probably a lot sooner than I expected, if I'm honest. So I've tried to kind of work that out. What does it look like to come back? And I think part of the reason was I went with a mindset of I'm going to go to the Philippines to do great things for God. And as time went on, I realised that God had taken me out of here and put me into the Philippines so he could do a lot of things in here. And that's often the journey, actually, is that you think, oh, I'm going to do stuff there for him. And he says, no, I'm going to put you there so I can do stuff in you. And that's been the really painful journey, actually, which I'm sure we'll open up a little bit, is actually the Philippines. We went to Philippines because God called us there, but in a way, God could have called us to Spain. He could have called us to Burgess Hill. Thank God he didn't. But, you know, he could have called us to any number of places. In a way, I think the main primary reason was actually, no, God wanted to do things in us to equip us and to release us and to heal us of things which may not have been possible if we stayed in the same context. And that's what God did for us. So actually coming back, in a sense for us, I might be saying, I don't think it's done yet. But God seems to think, no, enough has been done in order for you to continue that here. So, yeah.
So Alid kind of alluded to this, but as much as you feel comfortable, Lou, could you share with us what God's done in you throughout this journey, you know, what he's done in your heart through all this?
Okay, so our journeys have been very different.
I'm messed up. I'm spiritually messed up, I think, is the way I describe it for these last several years. It's like, wow, God is doing such a work on me, and Lou's been very patiently on the sidelines waiting.
I wouldn't say that.
That'd be my assessment.
You can unpack your mess in a minute. Let's unpack my mess first. So I think what it did for me is that I lived in different areas and I church planted with my parents when I was younger, and I haven't stayed in one place too long. I love church and I love friends and I love what life enables you to be able to do and enjoy. But when everything is stripped away, we have to, right, come to the place of being content in Christ, and our joy has to be in him. And so in the going, and it was a long, especially first 2 years, a very long, I would describe it as a desert place. Everything that we used to doing, it was obviously the opposite. Everything that we, spending time with friends, everything that we enjoyed doing, that wasn't there. So it became a place where I grew my personal relationship with Christ in such a way that I just don't think I could have quite experienced it in staying. And God knew that. And so one of the hardest things for me was, two areas. The children, obviously, were my main responsibility and concern. And so I had to surrender them over to Jesus in such a new way. I wasn't able to fix things. I wasn't able to make them happy in that sense. So we had to come to God together, and I had to say to them in their tears, you know just as much as I have, because we included them in the journey, that God's asked us to come. And what we do know is we trust him, and what we do know is that he loves us, And so although I can't fix this, what I can do is pray with you. We can surrender it over and we can see God change things. And I started to really, I've always had a strong faith that God can do things, but I didn't have things to fall back on. I didn't have a friend to phone up just to have a little moan or to pray with me, because the time difference was quite challenging as well. If I felt like I needed to talk to someone, they're asleep in England. And so I turned to God, and it's such a strange experience because no one wants to be in a place where they feel so alone. Obviously, we had each other, but there's something so beautiful about it, and it's such a privilege to have to rely on God that much that you actually see him being all the things he says he is to you. That he's your rock, he keeps his promises, that he's a provider, he's your father, he's your friend, he's your lover, everything. I started to see, I obviously believe everything God said, but his character just came tumbling down into my personal life. And one of the things which made it more challenging for me out there is I personally have a lot of allergies. My kids were healed, but I haven't been healed yet. And food out there was really hard to come by with the things that I could eat. I'm so sensitive to many things. And so I was living in minus 20% daily, just to get up was difficult. And that, again, formed something of such a reliance in Christ. It's so hard to explain. I know many of you here will be living with chronic illnesses and things like that you might be able to recognize what I'm talking about. But it's just a minute by minute, you're my daily bread. This is what you say, that in my weakness, you're strong. And it's just, you end up living scripture. And that becomes your foundation. And it just brought such joy to me. So yeah, those are the main areas. But I think prayer within that, what it did is it triggered me to pray. Not only in myself constantly praying in tongues, just talking to Jesus, but encouraging others to do the same. So if I saw a need, or if someone was talking to me about, something that had happened in their life, I'm like, let's pray. And I want to keep going with that. And I want to encourage you guys to do that too, because it's it takes you outside of this life and it puts you into kingdom culture. It puts you into something of heaven down on earth. And so, yeah, that's probably what he's done in me the most, just to be content, all circumstances, reliance on him, and the importance of God provides church and friends and fun. But when it comes to it, without them, you will be okay. You will be okay because he sustains you. And yeah, sorry, I could talk for a long time.
So I think for me, if I was to be really honest, it's been probably one of the most painful 4 years of my life. And it's been one of God's deconstructing a lot of thoughts and ideas, and what turned out to be some kind of deep-rooted lies in my life that weren't the things that are obvious and things that I know, but I was hiding from them. They're just blind spots that I'm not really aware of. And they're things that actually, it's only when God allows you, he takes you out from the distractions and the busyness and everything else. You allow him the space to dig a little bit deeper and to pick out some of those things that actually what we end up doing is just dealing with the secondary issues instead of the primary root issues. Does that make sense? So he highlighted to me, he's so gentle, but he just highlighted to me probably 7 key lies. I won't go into all of them now because we haven't got time, but there was one of them was probably actually dealing with the pain of letting go of things, such as my responsibilities and roles and loving you guys. And actually letting go of this was really painful for me, too painful actually. And there's this moment where God tells Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. And it felt a little bit like what had happened is that doing things for God had become like an Isaac in my life. The very thing that actually is a tool to allow God to get glory, if we're not careful, can become the means of not necessarily me getting glory, but me getting comfort, or me becoming reliant, or me relying on those things. And so it just, again, a little funny anecdote. I remember when I was here, I was handing on all of my responsibilities to different people and handing all these things on. And I think pretty much the only thing I had left was a work laptop. And there was about 6 or 8 weeks before we were going. And I remember Hannah sending me a message saying, Hannah, Alid, we're going to need your laptop to pass it on to someone else. And I remember calling up my friend Brian saying, Brian, they're even going to take my laptop. I was like, can you believe it? I can't do anything. Like I've got... And Brian was so tender, he just said, Alid, when I move a plant from one part of a garden to another, I prune it right back. And it's the way that it's going to be really, it's going to flourish and it's going to be better prepared. And he said, in this season, God is going to prune you back, prune you back, prune you back. And it's going to be a means of real fruitfulness in the season ahead. But I'll tell you what, no one loves to be pruned back. It is really painful. And we can look at other people and say, man, I wish I had a spiritual life like them. But the reality is none of us want to go through the spiritual journey they've had to go through in order to get there. Yes. We can say, man, I want to be like Joshua. I want to be like Moses. I want to be like Noah. But if God said, well, do you want to then sacrifice all of those things in order to be in the place that they are? We'd say, I'm not quite sure if I do. And so this was my journey of one of laying down and literally going, it felt like a burial process as I kind of had to bury a lot of those things. And there was I had a guy, Matt Chandler, his name is, he said this, and it really resonated with me. He said, I find it easier to see myself as useful to God than loved or wanted by him. And I found that really challenging because I felt like I really resonated with that. I've asked myself the question, God, how do you love me? Or what value am I here when I don't have the roles and the responsibility and the titles and all those things? I feel like I'm pretty useless. Yet God went through a deep journey to say, no, but I love you as you are. Mm-hmm. And he's had to really do a work in me, which means that actually without all of this now, I feel like for the first time probably in my life, I don't need to try and earn approval through doing. I can actually sit in a place of approval through being. Now, what's interesting is that I probably would have said that before I left because I wasn't aware of the blind spots. And this is the thing, it's not that I don't know it in my head, it's the fact that God had to do such a deep-rooted work in my heart that I wasn't aware of, that's something that really had to happen in my heart. And I think one of the reasons why God had to take us out of this place in order to go there, Ruth Haley Barton, she writes something. She said, most of us are not living lives available for God to speak to the deepest places of our hearts. Or we don't live lives that set us up for receiving or for hearing from God. There's a sense where we're so busy in doing things for God, we don't allow ourselves that season, that time to be able to pause and allow him to really speak into the depths of our hearts. And so that's been kind of part of my journey, is actually moving beyond the productive life of doing things for God and really allowing him to do the work of the real deep inner soul stuff, which is really painful. So yeah, that's been one of those things that I've been...
And I think just to add with that, I remember reading something Francis Chan said. He said, the greatest thing you can do is to just sit and believe in the love of God, to have peace inside and out. And I think to just have the opportunity, which we realise was such a privilege, to be able to have everything stripped from us so that we could just sit and we could be in that desert place to be taught and to be stripped down. You know, I think one of the pictures was a cheese plant. It takes some significant hacking, but it thrives in that place because of new growth that can only come from it after that. And so to learn to not just do, but to sit is actually quite a hard thing to do, I think, for a lot of us, because we're so used to our identities being in our job or having being called mum, or just there's so many things that form us. But when it comes down to it, the person that's formed us knows who we are, and he needs to remind us again and again who we are in him. And I remember the verse, Psalm, I think 147, verse 10 says, his delight is not in the strength of the horse, nor his pleasure in the legs of a man. But the Lord takes pleasure in those who fear him, in those who hope in his steadfast love. And so, yeah, just sitting on those promises and actually believing what he said was probably the greatest thing that we could learn in that place.
And I know from just journeying a bit with you, that's been your story of just hearing our ears open God, search our heart, ears open, we're responding to you. So obviously you then felt it was right that God called you back here. And I know we haven't got time to probably go into all those prophetic words and stuff. That's amazing. But it'd be really wonderful, just lastly, to hear church, mission, discipleship. What's it like coming back in this season? What are you bringing back to us? Because we are really excited to have you back, however that looks. And I'm excited to just hear, what are you carrying in your heart back?
I think the honest answer is we're not 100% sure. I think we feel that God's definitely done things in our hearts where we think we see things in a slightly different way, and maybe some of our philosophy of ministry has changed, or maybe it's just the way that we see ourselves in that. But we do know that God has called us back in this season, and we love this family. We love you guys. So at one level, we're here because we want to love and be part of the family and support and care in whatever way we possibly can. But I do feel as well that sometimes when God takes you out and gives you an experience, that experience has a richness that can shape other people in other contexts. And I do wonder whether these last 4 years, like I said, has been about taking us out so we can do a work in us. But I think it's interesting when you come back to a context, sometimes you see things in a different way. So it's interesting that we do it that way. Or I wonder if we need to do it that way, or maybe there's a different way that we can do this. So I think for us, we've had to relearn, I've had to relearn what it is to do mission outside of the context of a place like this. So Matthew 28 talks about going and making disciples of all nations. And what I found was, take me out of the platform and the performance and all of the roles and all that stuff. I probably wasn't as well equipped as I thought I would be in just meeting one-to-one with people and helping them see how their story was part of Jesus' story. And so I've had to relearn what it is actually to take up the personal invitation to be part of the Great Commission as my story. And to take that seriously. So this is great when we gather together. I love this when we gather together. But God has also called us not to just invite people to come and see, but actually is to equip all of us to go and tell. So I've got a passion, I've got a heart, a desire for us. How can we become really like a missional church where our mindset is, let's go and tell, let's go and speak life and share the kingdom wherever we go. So in whatever way I can do that, in whatever way we can support and facilitate that, absolutely, that's what we'd love to do.
So what we do know is that it was very clear that it was time to come back, because we asked that question and he said it's time. And we'd learnt to become so sensitive and acute to God's voice. And so we're certain of that. And again, the obedience has to come with acknowledgement of what God's doing. So coming back, I think for me personally, because of how he's taught me to rely on him, I just have this overflow in my heart that I would love other people to really recognize about who their Jesus is on one-on-one relationship with him. Church in this context is amazing, but outside of here, we want to make sure, don't we, that we are followers of Christ to everything that he's calling us to do, that we have that deep relationship with our Father and as a son or as a daughter, and to live life, him being our daily bread. So what I've loved doing so far in coming back, which he's using me for already, I don't know what's to come, is just being able to talk to people and being able to hear perhaps a struggle that they're, encountering at the moment, and bringing it to God together. But even if they don't know Jesus, it's sharing part of my story and saying, I haven't got any clever advice for you, I haven't got any wisdom, but through this hard time that I've been through, I've learned actually God can be such a strength to you. He can really encourage you. He cheers you on. He can provide the things that you need. So why don't we give it a go and just ask him? And keeping that connection and networking with people so that they get to really know the fullness of how a one-to-one relationship with Jesus can be and what it looks like outside of other support coming in. Because this is great, but I know we all want to stand before Jesus one day, and we want to make sure that we have glorified him in every part of our life. And that's my heart. And so I just sort of got this overflow. That's what I want to continue to do.
I think the last thing as well, because I know we need to finish, but there is a sense where God is really doing something in the UK. I think God is doing something here with us as a family. And I think there's change. John Mark Comer says, when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change, you're ripe for a change. And I think what's happened for me personally over these last few years is that the pain of just staying the way I was just too great. I had to allow him to prune me and to reform me in different ways. And I feel like that's what God is doing for us as a community of people. We're coming into a season of change where actually there's a sense in our hearts, I believe, where it's like, God, we are yearning for change. We're yearning for something more. And sometimes that comes with a sense of pain. Sometimes it comes a sense of loss. Sometimes it means we've got to surrender and become less reliant. We've got to become more reliant on God and surrender certain things. But actually it's in that change that the blessing comes. And I think that may be as well one of the things that we're really excited about is what God is doing. Yeah.
It's really exciting. I feel like we could delve into so much more with you guys, but we just want to honour time and honour the kids groups. It'd be beautiful. I don't know about you guys, but I'm just feeling like these pangs in my heart of like, oh God, I want some of this as well. Like, come and just go deeper in my heart. So I wonder if, I know for one I'm going to stand. And I just wonder if you're feeling in any sense, wherever you're at with Jesus, if you're feeling in any sense like, Lord, take me deeper, help my faith be birthed with obedience to you. Just my personal, like we've heard about their stories, my personal walk with you, Jesus. I want to go deeper with you. I want to hear your voice more clearly. I want to catch what you're doing in this time, in this moment. Where is my part? If any of that resonates with you, I just invite you to stand. Maybe we can all stand. That's a good. Let's all stand. And then if you just want to, if you want to
share
respond.
that picture?
Yeah.
Just as we were worshipping, I really felt like God that sort of downloaded a picture that I think, So he talked about him being the potter in the Bible and us being the clay. And I had a real sense that some of us might feel like, I don't even know where to start with something like this. I don't mean about traveling and going abroad. I mean about giving my life over to Jesus again to take and do something with it for his glory. And I just had this beautiful picture. Well, it wasn't beautiful, and it just sort of this big lump of clay, boring looking, solid, and it just flopped itself onto this, the table where something beautiful would be made. And I just felt God say, all you need is to bring yourself to the table. All you need is to surrender over and recognize that I'm the potter and you're the clay. And the clay isn't something that is insignificant. It has to start like that for beauty to come. It like a regular potter couldn't just create something out of thin air. It has to start with something. And that lump of clay, whatever you feel like your state of your life is at, whatever you feel like your relationship with Jesus is at, if you've got one at all, know that as soon as you put yourself on that table, he can create something beautiful, not only in you, but through you. And I just want that to sit with you. And as we surrender ourselves over, just allow him to say, Lord, I'm going to do it now in my heart. Lord, just use me for your glory in whatever way. Help me to choose obedience. Help me to have that tiny mustard seed of faith to start with, because I know you'll do the rest. I know you'll create something beautiful. I know, Father, that you're going to create something unique, because we aren't designed to be cookie cutters all the same. I just pray for whatever passion is you've placed on these people's hearts here this morning, that you will ignite it, that you will start molding something that they get drawn towards because of your character, and that they're so, help my heart to be so drawn towards what you're doing in me that I just can't wait for more. I just want to keep running forward in you. I want to keep being filled with your joy and the fruits of your spirit, and to enable me in your strength and in my weakness to flourish and to bear fruit. Lord, have your way in us this morning. Have your way in me this morning. Keep molding me. Keep chipping bits off. Keep soaking me in water so that you can do another part of something beautiful. Just keep shaping, Lord. Even that part of it, which is the fire that solidifies what he's made. Sometimes the fire is the bit which finishes it all off. Help us to be open to recognizing that you are good, that you're not here to harm us. You are here to grow us. You are here to love us. Help us to bring glory to you, Father God, in your name. Amen.